It's time for the Week in Review. Look at national, regional, and local stories from the past week. Here's Brandon Hansen, Managing Editor of the Chewelah Independent, and Scott Allen, Managing Director of Northern Lights Public Radio.
Thanks for tuning in. We start off this week's show with looking into some changing DUI laws. Drunken drivers might soon be able to avoid a DUI arrest by pulling off the road and taking a nap.
Yes, the nap clause.
Wow. Bill that would make that and other changes to Washington's impaired driving laws passed the Senate Transportation Committee on Tuesday and now heads to the full Senate. One notable feature of the bill would define vehicles as safely off the roadway if the drunken driver has moved to a passenger seat and turned the engine off.
Yeah, how many stories have you heard, police come across a vehicle where somebody's asleep, but they're also intoxicated, and they get a DUI for that, just simply because they're in the vehicle and the driver's side. You see this quite a bit, and I think what lawmakers are trying to do is, encourage people, if you're, drunk, just pull off the side of the road and sleep it off kind of deal. I think
and then they're going to leave you alone.
Yeah, I think that's a lot better, because if you're going to get arrested for pulling off the side of the road and sleeping, you're probably just going to try and power through and make it home.
Sure.
So this kind of gives, that option to be a good person and not drink and drive, because we all know how bad that can be. I know they changed a few other laws. I think they're looking to kind of restructure how many, how long DUIs would stay on your record, and then, how many would it take for it to be a serious felony and things like that. And DUI is kind of one of those interesting things is it can be very damaging to a person. If they get a DUI, it's very expensive. It's very bad to have on your record there. And then if you get multiple, that's just,
It turn into a felony situation. You could lose. I imagine not being able to drive to work, all the things that go along with that.
Right. So, you don't want people drinking and driving, but there's also that, you can really ruin a person's life with even one DUI kind of deal. And then once they stack up, it can be hard. What do they say? It can be hard to get out of that spiral there, because I'm sure if you lose your license, you're probably depressed and you might want to drink more.
And there's a huge amount of people then that don't have their license and drive anyways and get rearrested for that. So yeah, it's a whole thing. It's probably an urban legend, but I had always kind of assumed, because I'd heard it once somewhere, nothing I ever needed to practice, but that if you had pulled off the roadway and removed your key from the car and they were not accessible to you, that you were safe from getting a DUI. But the way this reads, it wasn't, but it may be something similar now.
Yeah, and the big thing about this is you have to get over in the passenger seat. You can't just fall asleep in the driver's side, and you can't have the engine running. I've actually known a few people that get dinged like this, where they're in their car, engine may not even be on, and they may be asleep, and they get a tap on the window, and they get dinged for, kind of being drunk in their car kind of deal, which I kind of get, because what's the next step from that is driving away, and you could still be intoxicated. So
yes.
I do get that, because that's a hard line to draw. Well, we know this person is intoxicated in this car. What are they going to do next kind of deal?
Are they going to have the proper decision-making processes?
Yes.
Because sometimes you don't in that state.
Yeah, definitely there. So
right.
I think this is set up just to be like, here, let's give people a chance to get off that road and not try and power through and make it home, because we all know that it can be very disastrous doing that. So.
All right. You're going to do a story, and I'm kind of jealous, because I would have geeked out on this one. That's probably why you have it. First photo of a black hole.
Yeah, Scott, you want to see what a black hole looks like?
I do.
Okay. Wednesday morning, the Event Horizon Telescope Project and the National Science Foundation announced the groundbreaking results from the telescope project, featuring the first image of a black hole. It looks a little blurry orange with a glow around a dark center. It looks kind of small in the photo, but it's actually 40 billion kilometers across.
Wow.
Yeah, that's 3 million times the size of Earth and larger than the size of our entire solar system.
And this is just one black hole.
Yeah, this is just one black hole. The black hole was photographed by a network of 8 telescopes across the world and is 55 million light years away, thank God, away from the Earth, and has a mass of 6.5 billion times that of the Sun. So black holes, they're fun. Not even light can escape these supermassive black holes. They are, I love how they term this light-sucking monsters. This was theorized by Einstein more than a century ago. I actually kind of saw a cool comparison. Einstein described what a black hole would look like through physics, having no idea what they'd actually look like, right? He just theorized, hey, it's going to look like this. Looks
right
exactly right on. So that's kind of cool there. And
kind of makes you wonder about him.
Yeah, hey, he's a smart dude. So have you seen the photo, Scott?
I did. I saw it yesterday.
It kind of hit the internet by storm, and I loved all the I.S. Sauron jokes, the Lord of the Rings people are making. That was pretty great. It's very interesting to see something like this, and very dramatic, too. It's spooky to me, just because knowing just how serious and crazy black holes are. And now to know that, we have definitive proof that they exist, because this was a theory for years, and you just kind of assumed it was true because we talked about it so much, but now we have, actual visible truth or proof that these things exist. So.
And that's crazy that Einstein could guess it.
Yeah. Well, not guess
What
it.
was up with that guy?
He didn't
physics.
guess it.
Yes.
He used physics.
Oh, wow.
He's smarter than you or I.
Wow, that's amazing. All right.
Yeah.
Something not so amazing.
Speaking of, hey, do you want to see another photo of a black hole?
That's right. It's your income tax return. All right, IRS refunds are down. Individual tax returns down $6 billion this year, according to the Internal Revenue Service. IRS has issued about $6 billion less in refunds through the end of March than it did over the same period last year. Agency said it distributed $206.1 billion in refunds through March 29th, nearly a 3% decrease from the $212 billion it issued in refunds by March 30th of last year. IRS also has issues about 1.6 million fewer refunds and processed 1.3 million fewer refunds than it did over the same period in 2008. That seems like a lot of missing tax refunds.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see why 1 million people didn't file their returns.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Or maybe people are, since there is less going out, maybe more people owe and they're waiting till the last minute like me.
Yeah, that is kind of, you wait for that pain to...
Well, and I take it, I take it to the sense is, why do I want to pay early and let them use my money for interest?
Right.
Okay, sorry. All right, the decline comes after the Republican-led Congress passed several tax cuts backed by President Trump in 2017, and the IRS subsequently changed its withholding guidelines, resulting in less money being taken out of paychecks, but also less money being refunded to taxpayers.
Yeah, that is kind of the, what would you call it, kind of the ballerina dance. I don't know, filling out those W-2s and being like, okay, how much do I want to get taken out? Because you can, set that number in there to get a lot taken out.
So you got a big refund check.
Right. So it's like, do I want to get a refund but get a smaller paycheck? Do I want to get a bigger paycheck? And I've been in both boats where I'm like, no, I'll just save up or something like that. I'll take that hit. Come tax time, and other times I'm just like, you know what? No, I want that refund. So I'll take a little less via paycheck, and I'll just go with that. So
I think a financial advisor would say learn how to save,
right.
Because what you're doing with that is really you're giving your money to the government, and they're making interest off that.
Right. Right.
And you're losing interest off that money,
right?
Where you could be doing so. I think in that kind of situation, if you're doing that, but it's hard for people to save, and they use it like a savings account. But you're far better off, putting that money away yourself than letting somebody else have the interest off it. Even though money in a bank hardly gets anything anymore, but still, you're giving someone else your money to use.
Right. At least they're not using any interest there.
Yeah.
It looks
or
like
perhaps maybe even. I hate to say it, but your taxes go to a lot of war stuff.
Here we go, Scott.
Sorry, but what are they doing with that money?
Right. The average refund this year was $2,800. This kind of cracks me up. That's about $20 less than the average refund last year. So it only dropped $20 on the average refund.
That's really nothing but when you add it all up, right?
Yeah, and this bums me out because I did not get $2,800 back. I want to know what the heck's going on. So,
all right.
Tax time's interesting, I tell you, especially around here, because once people get their tax return, the stuff they buy around here cracks me up. So.
Yeah, it's nice to stick it in the bank and hold on to it for a rainy day, but sometimes it burns a hole in your pocket because it's extra money. But if you plan for that, like you're talking about, I had extra money taken out of my account, and you're going to do it that way. It is a nice chunk of money all at once to do something with.
Right.
Maybe using it for your vacation or whatever.
And it's probably harder to do it if you have kids, because you need that money
in your check.
Yeah, in your check. You need that money for a variety of expenses. I keep hearing kids are expensive, and it terrifies me.
Yes.
So.
Well, you'll learn. I'm sure your puppy, you know how much puppies cost, too, and that's like a good groundbreaking thing for kids.
Oh, boy, I do now. I do know how my broken leg puppy is.
Yes,
so.
You told me you had a little invested in that dog.
Yeah, a little bit. Right. Hopefully, like a car, she'll start paying us back.
Yeah, good luck with that. All right. Immigration numbers up in March.
Yeah, so I put this story in. We kind of talked a little bit. I don't want this to get into build a wall or don't build a wall, because I don't really feel like that's even what this conversation should be about. But let's
I'm
go
on
to
the wall
from.
About the wall.
You're on the wall about the wall. Great. That's fantastic.
Okay.
But U.S. immigration authorities apprehended or turned back more than 103,000 migrants, including approximately 53,000 families. And this is crazy, 9,000 basically unaccompanied children, so no adults or anything.
Oh, man.
Along the U.S.-Mexico border last month, kind of overwhelming the Trump administration's efforts to address the surge in migrant families. This has been going on where we've had migrants come up from Central America through Mexico to our border here. The Chief of Law Enforcement Operations for the Border Patrol, or actually we're saying that wrong, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Some Border Patrol people get mad when you confuse that it's the blanket organization and then there's the Border Patrol that's part of it, so you got to be careful. But Brian Hastings told reporters Tuesday that they've arrived at a breaking point. About 92,000 of the 103,000 immigrants were apprehended between ports of entry, while nearly 11,000 migrants who appeared at ports claimed asylum and were deemed inadmissible and turned back, according to the organization. This averages out to about 3,000 apprehensions per day. Hastings said immigration authorities are struggling to confront kind of the humanitarian and border security crisis. We've heard that before, and people have argued whether there's a crisis or not. But this is the busiest February for border officials in the last 12 years. The government apprehended more than 76,000 migrants in February, including 36,000 families. So that was last month. So yeah, these numbers keep going up. And to me, it seems like I'm looking at our government, and they're not really working on policy solutions. They're working more on campaign slogans concerning this issue. And when you have tens of thousands of migrants coming up, we have to kind of address that. Whether it's allowing them to kind of come into our society and be a part of it and do it, have as many ways for them to do it legally, or do we need to be kind of harder edged and kind of turn them back and say, hey, we can't handle this many people coming into our country. And I don't think that argument is particularly evil or anything like that. What I think is a lot of countries have borders, and a lot of countries have certain ports of entry. I can't just walk up through the woods to Canada and say I'm here now. That would get me in a lot of trouble.
Oh, yeah.
So, I feel the idea that we should just, open the borders and just let everybody cross no matter what is not, no other country in the world does that, really. Except for one odd thing is, Mexico is letting a lot of these migrants just walk, right through the country, not really doing their own apprehensions or anything like that. But I don't see any solutions getting touted that are practical solutions. It's just, campaign slogans on both sides. And it's frustrating because with an issue like this, to me, this is a humanitarian crisis. You have these people who obviously don't want to stay in in Central America, we've heard the stories from there. You've heard the Venezuela stories and things like that.
Yes.
Not a good situation. All the crime from drugs and things like that, it is really bad. And they're trying to escape that. Why? Can you imagine being like, I don't want to live in Chewelah anymore. I'm going to take my family, and we're
going
just
to Colville. A little safer there.
Even going to Colville, even just moving a town over. I'm sure people around here can relate to at least just moving, how much of a pain in the butt that is. Now, imagine just moving to a completely different country. So
with no money or resources or family or anything like that.
Right. So these people are moving for a reason, and I still feel you need to have security. You just can't let every single person come in and be like, you'll be fine, because it does cause issues. And anytime you have, a large migration anywhere through history, you can see where these do create tensions and things like that. But I just don't see any leader in our country right now providing, the proper kind of solutions and things that we could do practically. Because, a lot of people like to say build a wall. Well, that's going to be 10 years off, and we're dealing with this crisis right now. It's going to take a very long time to build that wall. And like you said, or like I said, I guess, some of the migrants go to our ports of entry and surrender themselves for asylum, and a border wall won't stop that. No. We also had the illegal immigrant that shot that officer, that deputy over in Kittitas, I think.
Yes.
And he was, the media reported a illegal immigrant, but he came in with a visa, and it just overstayed. So again, you have this kind of media hot point, but it doesn't really match up with the facts in terms of he would have got in wall or no wall. And
one of the claims I've heard, and I guess it depends on the situation and where the people are coming from, that one of the things I heard, as probably propaganda, at least that's the way I took it, was that these are all murderers and drug dealers that we're letting in, and they're going to cause more crime in the United States. But obviously, when you look at those numbers that the government themselves released about the people that are there, 76,000 immigrants,
right,
in the last 12 months, and 36,000 of them were families.
Yes.
So almost all, because, if it's a family, it's a mom, dad, and a kid. So almost all of those 76,000 immigrants were families.
Right.
It's not drug dealers and that kind of stuff trying to get in. It's, like you're saying, people trying to escape harsh conditions. But when you look at America, we're not that far off. I kind of wonder when you hear that, I realize it might be coming from a troubled country, but sometimes, like in Mexico, they're not. And you wonder how much better is their life here in America than it was down there.
Right.
Because, we keep raising our minimum wage, but everything goes up with it. You're not putting any more money in your pocket.
Really
it's just a ridiculous circle.
Right.
You know, why even raise the minimum wage? Because it's just forcing businesses to raise prices to compensate for it. It does no good. So I kind of wonder, I ask what's in your head. If you're leaving Mexico, it ain't that much better up here. You want to just trade places?
I would say, at least the stories I've read about, Mexico and Central America, it has a lot to do with government corruption. What you have to realize is, in a lot of these issues, the police are paid off, or
especially the drug cartels in Mexico and
stuff. Yes, or part of it. I mean, remember I believe it was years ago when about 200 students went missing down there, and the police helped with that. Don't need to be a part of that. I just can't imagine the kind of fear you would have knowing that the government is really part of the cartel at this point, kind of deal. And that's just not, I understand why some people would want to leave, because it hasn't gotten better in decades down there.
I have kind of a unique experience, too, is that I was in the Midwest, and I managed, and I lived in Goshen,
right,
and Napanee, where they make all the RVs.
Right.
A huge immigrant population there, some legal, some not, but they're the ones building our RVs.
Right.
And so the one park that I manage, giant mobile home park, 400 units. So it's like its own little town and infrastructure and all that. City brings services to the curb. You're responsible for everything within that piece of property, water, sewer, and electric. Probably about 85, the last park I managed for that company was probably about 85% Hispanic.
Right.
And it was a learning process for me because they have their family culture. I'm sorry, it's so much more richer and vibrant than American family culture. It really is. I mean, I had one family that moved in, and then one of his kids and their family moved in, and another kid and their family moved in.
Yeah.
And now I have this basically 4 generations of this Hispanic family living in the mobile home park. And every month when rent came due, the father brought all of the kids in to pay their rent and make sure everybody paid the rent. And I said, why do you guys all come in as a family and everybody pays the rents? And he goes, because I vouched for my family. I told you they were good people and you rented to them and stuff, and I want to make sure they're living up to it.
Right.
And I just was like, wow. And every, sometime the 1st to the 5th, the whole family came up to the office and paid all their rents for their various, mobile homes in the park. And it was just watching that and watching those families. They have such a rich culture. And I think it's some of American societies, the white picket fence dream and stuff like that has torn that away from us, and that's what kind of makes me wonder. I realize there's corruption in their country and stuff,
right?
But the Hispanic people, the Mexican people themselves, have such a loving, caring family culture. I don't think we see these things when we talk about border walls.
Well, again, we're doing it again where we're just talking about numbers, and you really can't. You can't just say, well, that entire number is this or that, and we do that. We're just like, oh, well, here's the label on this incredibly large group of people, and that's hard to do because on the flip side of that, you can't tell me when 103,000 people cross the border, there aren't some bad eggs in that.
It's going to happen.
Right. It's going to happen. And what worries me is just the size of that movement, right? If 4,000 people came through the border, our Border Patrol could handle that. Vet all those people, move it through all the legal matters pretty easily. But when you have 100,000 people come through, it puts stress on our system. We don't have, I was reading deeper into the story, we don't have enough holding areas, to process them and let them in. So they're basically just, leaving people outside. We don't have the infrastructure to handle this right now. So again, back to kind of that solution thing. Instead of this campaign slogan, it's very vague, is just build a wall or open the borders. Okay, why aren't we being very specific where it's like, hey, we need to upgrade our ports of entry, we need to do reform in immigration, court to speed up that process. One thing I've heard about becoming a citizen, extremely expensive.
Yeah, I know a gentleman, he'd spent over $10,000 and he still wasn't a citizen.
Right. So you can't expect everybody to drop $10,000 at the border.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Could how many people in Chewelah could drop $10,000 to maintain their American citizenship?
Yeah.
Would not be easy.
So I think we're oversimplifying this, but either side or either extreme of the spectrum, I think, is not providing solutions or even a policy we can go after that's
looking
realistic.
At the big picture of the whole thing.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And that's kind of, when I see something like this, I'm like, all right, lawmakers, you need to come up with some realistic solutions and not just tell me vote for you because you'll wave your magic wand and something will happen. That's kind of bugging me. And I like at the beginning where you're like, I'm on the wall about the wall. If I would say if a wall kind of gets everybody in that port of entry as opposed to just doing these dangerous, desert crossings and stuff like that. It's not easy to cross these deserts they're coming across. Then we can process them better. But then those ports of entry have to be able.
You got to have the infrastructure to handle 100,000 people a year. Wow.
Right. So, and again, we can say the wall, but it's going to take many years to build. Just tied up in courts with the eminent domain, and it's going to come across people's property. Look how much stoppage and issues have happened with the North-South Freeway. because they're running it right through, people's property and stuff. I mean, my grandpa, he made a pretty dollar off of that because they ran the freeway right through where his shop was, and boy, you bet you he got a great deal in court, for that money. So I can only imagine a wall that long, how how costly that would be just to go through
to work
the
it out.
Yeah, work it out there. So I think the logistics there, if we can do it in the right manner, but there's going to be a gap in terms of years to when it's constructed. So we've got to deal with this right now because we're having a surge right now. So where are your solutions in the present, not just something floating out in the future that'll solve everything? And again, I think that a wall also, you have to consider people fly into this country. There's tunnels. People boat into this country. So, there's other issues. It's not going to be completed and mission accomplished. And then we'll have to maintain the wall, too. So, it's
a huge expense.
Yeah, it's a huge expense. So I'm looking at this, and I'm just not seeing it. It feels like we need to have more policy discussions on both sides.
Yes.
And it's not happening right now. It's just a yelling match. And this is going to be used as a political football where, I'm so virtuous because I believe in this, or I'm so virtuous because I believe in this. And in the meantime, we get numbers like this, and the Border Patrol is right in the middle of this, and no solutions are reached.
And everybody's arguing.
Yeah, everybody's arguing.
And one thing I guess I would say is urge people to remember that okay, they're not from our country or whatever. They're not Americans, but they're people too, and they're people just like me and you. And like you said, 36,000 families. What if your family was in a crisis situation? What if the state of Delaware was in a civil unrest and everybody wanted out of Delaware?
Right.
And
right.
we're stopping them at the edge of the state, not letting them into the next state and that kind of stuff. You can look at it in those terms. One thing I've said this on the morning show before is I get really irritated with the propaganda about Russia, because if you really go look at Russia and stuff, they're just, and any country, they're just like us. They get up, they work, they love their kids, they take care of their family. They're really no difference in us, but let's demonize them because they invaded the Ukraine, and let's forget about all of the countries. Our own country invades to save resources, but they're the first to point the finger at another country and say, naughty, naughty. Well, you always do it. Why are you pointing your finger? And it really bothers me, and it's the same as these Mexicans families that are in trouble, these Central American families that are in trouble, whatever. They're no different than us. These people that live in Russia, they're no different than us. It's our governments that cause all the problems. Well, I just, if people could see the big picture sometimes, and before you pick the side on the wall, realize they're human beings.
Yeah, we are, and that's the tough part, which kind of makes me get very nervous or something like that, is you're dealing with human beings. But still, you don't just want to open the border and let anybody come in. Right? You need to have security. You need to have.
And we don't want drug
borders.
dealers and murderers and rapists just walking all willy-nilly into the country. So there has to be a process.
But then you have these backups of 100,000 migrants at these ports of entry or trying to cross these deserts and all this. And that's an issue, because you don't know who's coming in, and that's such a hard thing to deal with. I
think the way you're looking at it, though, Brandon, is really intelligent, and it's too bad that our two sides of the government can look at it. Yeah, we need to control this. It is a problem. Let's make it happen in a humane and safe way for us and them.
Well, what I don't kind of understand is, we're apprehending a lot of these people and putting them in private holding areas and things like that. Well, guess what? That costs us money.
Yes.
So I don't get how they're costing us money by crossing the border illegally, but then if we apprehend them, they're still costing us money.
So what's the difference?
Yeah, what is the difference? And I'm scratching my head, and I'm wondering why if our policy is we don't want them in the country because they're illegal, why are they not then taken out of the country? Because somebody's making money at these private holding pens.
Oh, yeah.
And I've seen reports of the sexual abuse reports to come out or have come out in the thousands. So that terrifies me.
Even a lawsuit from a woman who crossed the border, and I think it was one of these. They did something where they separated her from her child, and she's actually got an international lawsuit against the United States for like $3 million, and she's sitting in a detention center.
Right.
So she came across the border with an attorney.
Yeah.
How does that work?
I don't know. She came prepared, but
Tough choices.
I just think anytime you have a moving large group of people moving into a different area, I mean, we've seen refugee crises before, and there isn't a single sentence solution that can solve these issues. They're usually very very harsh, very scary realities of dealing with a large group of people, either moving towards your borders or moving into somebody else's borders. Just movement as a huge mass of humans does cause tensions and does cause issues.
And we hear about that in the news happening in other countries, but don't realize that's happening every day in our own.
Right. And I just... when we have these immigration stories like pop up either in the news or social media, and people write their opinions, and again, they just slap the campaign slogan they believe in. And I'm just like, no, you don't understand. That one sentence doesn't mean a thing. Like, we need policies. We need to pick a direction, because
arguing is doing nothing.
We shut down the country over the border wall funding, and we don't have a border wall. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So, or a full border wall kind of deal. So we're not even going in a direction right now, regardless or not if you think, hey, that's the right solution or not. We're not even working towards a solution right now
of any.
Which makes me kind of rip my hair out. Is like, hey, we need to work on go in some direction in order to if this means giving a CBP a lot of money to make their staff bigger, expand their ports of entry, and make it easier for us to vet all these people, great, let's go that direction. If it's to make some kind of wall that will at least funnel people into the right ports of entry, we need to, it's happening right now, so we need to stop arguing and figure something out.
Because right now the border control is catching people at the border and saying, can you wait a minute, because we're not ready for you.
Yeah.
We haven't decided what we're doing.
The new welcome sign for America right now is like a DMV line right now. It's really
Take
sad.
a number.
Yeah. It's
oh,
really
man, I'm number 1042. This is going to be a while.
Yeah, this is going to be so it just... I just wish I had a solution, and I do not like single sentence solutions that don't really delve into all the issues.
I think you kind of do have a solution. I liked what you said, anyways.
Well, I know probably 10 people listening could tell me why that's the wrong solution, and I agree. You talk to a border patrol agent, and they're working so hard. They're dealing with apprehending people, and that can't be a fun job. I feel for them, because that, you have to make a split-second decision, or it's a dangerous, deal. Because again, there can be some bad eggs that can fire back, or things like that. You don't want to deal with that either. So, No, it's a good solution. I thought I had one a few weeks ago. I was talking with some people about the state of our government and how people feel, and a lot of people feel in our countries that we're not represented. We got the two sides that fight and just leave us all behind as they run around their vicious circle. And I said, and a lot of that comes from corporate America and all the lobbyists and all that kind of stuff that push laws through that aren't good for the people. They're good for the corporations. And the idea I had was rewriting corporate law. And this would freak a lot of people out. But the number one thing, and you can actually go to jail for not taking care of your stockholders, white-collar crime or whatever. Right.
So you can actually go to jail, rewrite corporate law so that the number one thing a corporation has to do is protect their employees. Number two is protect their environment. And number three is protect the shareholders. If they rewrote that, I think it could really change the face of America and really curtail that corporate greed. Because now any company that doesn't take care of their employees or the environment, that CEO going to prison.
Right.
And I think that would be awesome. Quick. How do we change corporate law?
Right.
And put those stockholders. Great, you're investing in that company and you're helping, but you're third on the list because people in our planet are more important than money. And I think that's my little thing that I came up with. I want to change.
So how do we start that campaign?
I don't know. How do we change? Your corporations are going to fight us. but I think that's something we talk about, changing our country, and the possibility of a civil war if we wanted to change the way our government works or anything like that. People dream all the time about that kind of stuff. Is making it America a better place. And my personal philosophy is you can make America a better place by removing the greed.
And we saw this at the turn of the 20th century with kind of those, the breaking up those monopoly laws and things like that. So maybe we need another change like that.
And then at the end of the Reagan era, that kind of changed again. Because radio is a prime example. The FCC came in after all that, where we were squashing all the monopolies. Everything snaps back, and then it went backward where they came into broadcasting and they said, you know what? We don't care anymore. We used to have a law that said you could only own one AM, one FM, and one TV in a market. As an example, Spokane, I want to say it was Q6. They owned Q6, 2 radio stations, and the newspaper. Federal government came in and said, no, you've got too much control of the media. You either sell your radio properties or you sell your newspaper. At that time, they sold their radio and television properties of Q6 and kept the newspaper. Then the government came in, I'm going to say late 80s, 90s, and they flipped that and they deregulated it. You could own as many radio stations or TV stations or newspapers in any market. We don't care. And what happened is Clear Channel exploded and bought up over half the radio stations on the planet. Do you know what kind of power that is? I don't think that's okay.
That's kind of crazy. Yeah.
I don't think it's okay. So,
just the one company owning that all is kind of scary there. So.
It is.
So. Gosh, yeah.
So those answers for the wall, it goes into a whole thing of the way our government works and runs the country.
Right.
And I think you could ask anybody in the street, it ain't working.
Right. Yep.
It ain't working, and it's separating all of us and make us fight. I'm 50, just about 53 years old. I can't remember since in my adult life when I've seen people in this country more divided on the most simplest of issues.
Right.
I mean, even take it right down to the environment. I don't care if there's climate change. I don't care if there's global warming. Let's call it do the right thing.
Right.
Don't dump your antifreeze down the drain. Conserve water. Protect the forests. Protect the future for our kids. And government loses sight of that. I always wonder how politicians can pass a law that's detrimental to us and then go home and look at their children. Well, I don't get it.
That's funny you talk about the environment. It's funny when the laws pass that are intended to help the environment, but then once you really look at it, it's like, what did that do other than raise taxes? You know what I mean?
Put so many other things in there that makes it not work.
Right.
Let's pass a law for one thing. You don't get to add a bunch of sideline stuff because they're little trinkets you want in your pocket for your pet project.
Right. Or let's ban straws, but hey, that sewage plant in Seattle is still spewing, a bunch of waste into Puget Sound. It's just like you kind of want to hit your head and go like, what are you doing? Like,
take that straw that you just threw away and take a drink of the Puget Fountain.
Yeah, I guess so. I was just like,
it is called Puget.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right, we have soapboxed way more than you.
I know. Goodness.
All right. That is our show for the week. The Week in Review. I'm Scott.
I'm Brandon.
Thanks for listening to the Week in Review with Brandon Hansen, Managing Editor of the Chewelah Independent, and Scott Allen, Managing Director of Northern Lights Public Radio. Past episodes are in video format on the Chewelah Independent's website and on KCHW's YouTube channel. This program was recorded and filmed at the KCHW FM studios in Chewelah, Washington.